Welcome to HH28, where we unravel the secrets of self-discovery and matchmaking. We are Hugh and Heather,
two master holistic guides dedicated to helping you navigate the worlds of numerology, astrology, and personality in pursuit of meaningful connections.
Ever catch yourself wondering why some people seem hardwired for spreadsheets, while others, well, they seem to thrive on spontaneity?
It's fascinating, isn't it?
We're about to take a deep dive into a system that grapples with that very question, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator.
Better known as the MBTI.
Get ready to unlock those fascinating personality quirks we all have. We're dissecting your submitted articles, research, even those intriguing notes you provided,
To bring you the most intriguing takeaways on the MBTI.
So where do we even begin with this whole MBTI thing? It's not exactly a new fad, is it?
Not at all. The MBTI actually has roots reaching back to the mid-20th century.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Take us back to the beginning.
Picture this. Isabel Briggs Myers and her mother, Katharine Cook Briggs, deeply captivated by the work of Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung.
Jung. That name rings a bell. Refresh my memory.
Jung was all about psychological types, these inherent differences in how we experience and process the world.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
And here's the interesting part. He didn't view these differences as good or bad, just inherent variations in how our minds work.
I like that.
Myers and Briggs took this concept and really they ran with it. They wanted to create a structured, approachable system.
For people to, figure out their own personality?
Exactly, to identify and understand their own unique personality preferences. And that's how the MBTI was born.
That's so cool. But how do you even begin to categorize something as complex as, someone's personality?
It all comes down to 4 core dimensions. Each one represents a spectrum of how we approach the world.
All right, let's break it down. What are these 4 dimensions? I'm ready.
First up, we have extroversion, often represented by the letter E, versus introversion, represented by the letter I. This dimension is all about where you draw your energy from. Extroverts, energized by social interaction. They thrive in stimulating environments.
Makes sense.
Introverts, on the other hand, recharge through solitude. Quieter settings are more their style.
So it's less about being shy or outgoing and more about what fuels your internal battery. Right?
Exactly.
I like it. Okay, what's next?
The second dimension is sensing, or S, versus intuition, which is N.
Yeah,
we use N to distinguish it from introversion, which is also I.
That makes sense.
This dimension focuses on how we perceive information. Sensing types, all about concrete facts, tangible details, the here and now.
Present moment, for sure.
They trust what they can see, hear, experience directly.
Gotcha.
Intuitive types, on the other hand, drawn to abstract concepts, underlying patterns, future possibilities.
So they're thinking bigger picture long term.
Yes. They're always looking beyond the obvious, searching for meaning and connections.
So if sensing types are focused on building the house, intuitive types are designing the blueprint.
A perfect analogy.
I like that. Okay, what's our third dimension?
Thinking, or T, versus feeling, or F. This one delves into how you make decisions.
Ooh, this is a big one.
Thinking types prioritize logic, objective analysis, impartial reasoning.
So they carefully weigh the pros and cons.
Precisely. They want to arrive at the most rational choice.
Okay, that makes sense. And feeling types?
Feeling types prioritize, you guessed it, feelings, but also personal values, empathy, the impact decisions have on others.
Leading with their heart. I can see how that would be important.
Absolutely. They consider the emotional well-being of everyone involved.
So it's a head versus heart approach, but not in a judgmental way.
Right. Just different decision-making styles.
Love it. Okay, what's our final dimension?
Last but not least, judging, J, versus perceiving, P. This one centers around, how you approach structure and organization in your life.
Oh, I relate to this one already.
Judging types crave order, planning, decisiveness. They live for those schedules and to-do lists.
Type A?
You could say that. They find comfort in predictability, clear expectations. Perceiving types, however, are drawn to flexibility, spontaneity, adaptability.
So they prefer to go with the flow.
Exactly. They like to stay open to new information, comfortable making decisions as they go.
So if judging types are the architects of organization, perceiving types are the masters of improvisation.
I like that.
It's fascinating how these 4 dimensions create like a framework for understanding so many different personalities.
Got it. It's like we each have a personality recipe.
A recipe. I love that.
And each of the 16 MBTI types is just a unique combination of these 4 dimensions.
Creating this amazingly diverse tapestry of human personality.
Exactly.
16 distinct types. That's incredible. I mean, we obviously don't have time to explore all 16 in detail.
Right.
But I'm so curious to see how these dimensions combine to create those personality portraits.
Yeah.
Could you walk us through a few examples?
Absolutely. Let's start with ISTJ.
Okay.
Often referred to as the inspector.
The inspector. Okay.
So imagine someone, they're incredibly organized.
Okay.
They thrive on routine and they always follow through on commitments.
I know the type.
That's a classic ISTJ. They value structure, dependability.
Doing things by the book.
Absolutely.
I can think of a few people like that. Incredibly reliable, always on time. Okay, give me another one. Who's next in our personality showcase?
Let's flip the script. Let's look at ENFPs.
Okay.
ENFPs are all about big ideas, forging those connections, and they're energized by possibilities.
Oh, they're thinking big picture.
Yes.
Yes.
They're the ones brainstorming those innovative projects, inspiring everyone with their enthusiasm.
So we go from the meticulously planned world of the ISTJ to the ENFP, who's always ready to embrace a new adventure. That's quite a contrast.
It is.
Give me one more, something totally different.
Okay. Have you ever encountered someone who always seems to be 3 steps ahead?
Uh-huh.
Strategizing, like a chess master.
Oh, yeah.
That could very well be an INTJ,
Okay.
often called the architect.
The architect.
INTJs prioritize strategic thinking, they value their independence, and they are constantly seeking ways to improve systems and processes.
So they're like quietly observing, analyzing, finding those solutions that other people might miss.
Exactly.
Okay, this is all starting to click. But tell me, is there more to these types than just these 4 letters?
Yes.
It feels like there must be like a deeper layer to uncover.
You're absolutely right. It's not just about those 4 dimensions in isolation. It's about understanding how those dimensions interact with one another. And this is where Jung's concept of cognitive functions comes in.
Cognitive functions. Okay, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
I have to admit, it also sounds a little intimidating.
It's not as complicated as it might seem at first.
Okay, good.
Essentially, cognitive functions provide us with a framework for understanding the specific ways in which each type processes information, makes decisions.
So it's like we're zooming in on the inner workings of each type.
Exactly. So while we all have access to 8 cognitive functions, 8, we each have a preferred order, a hierarchy, that shapes how we perceive and engage with the world.
Okay, so it's like we've got a toolbox, we've got all these different tools.
Yes.
We all have the same tools,
Right.
but we reach for certain ones more instinctively than others,
Yes.
depending on, what we're trying to do.
Exactly. And the function that a type uses most dominantly is known as their dominant function.
Okay, and this dominant function significantly shapes their worldview, their strengths, even their potential areas for growth.
That's fascinating. So it's not just about identifying as an introvert or an extrovert, but understanding those specific cognitive tools that each type naturally leans on.
Exactly.
So it's getting into the nitty-gritty, the how of how those preferences manifest in the real world.
Absolutely.
This is really cool. Could you give us an example to illustrate how this plays out in real life? Because I'm having a little bit of trouble picturing it.
Sure. Let's compare 2 of the types we've already discussed.
Okay.
Both introverted types, but with very different approaches to life. The INFJ,
Okay.
often called the advocate,
The advocate?
and the ISTJ, the inspector.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we talked about them earlier. Yes. So the INFJ leads with introverted intuition, meaning they're constantly processing information through this lens of patterns, symbolism, future possibility.
Future possibilities.
So imagine them facing a complex problem. They might effortlessly connect seemingly unrelated dots to generate a truly innovative solution.
So they're seeing the whole picture, like the end game, while everyone else is still trying to figure out the rules of the game.
Exactly.
It's like they have a sixth sense. What about our ISTJ?
The ISTJ's dominant function is introverted sensing.
Okay.
So they ground their decisions in concrete facts, past experiences, established methods.
Tried and true.
Yes. Presented with that same problem, they might tap into their wealth of knowledge, their experience, looking for that reliable, time-tested solution.
So if we picture them approaching this problem, it's like they have this mental library of proven solutions.
Yes.
And they're like expertly selecting the best tool for the job.
A perfect analogy.
it highlights how these dominant functions really shape not only like our problem-solving strategies, but also just our overall approach to the world.
Absolutely.
This is making me think about my own dominant functions. What about you?
Me too. It's fascinating to see how these play out in our own lives.
It makes the MBTI so much more than just those 4 letters.
Right.
It's about understanding the why behind the what.
Yes.
Those deeper cognitive processes that are really driving our actions.
Absolutely.
But before we get too carried away, celebrating the wonders of the MBTI,
right.
I think it's important to acknowledge that it has received its fair share of criticism, hasn't it?
That's true. Like any system that attempts to categorize human behavior, the MBTI is not without its limitations.
Let's unpack those criticisms a little bit.
Sure.
What are some of the main concerns people have raised about the MBTI?
One primary critique centers around the MBTI's reliance on self-reporting.
Okay.
So the results hinge on individuals accurately perceiving, but then also reporting their own preferences.
Right, which can be tricky.
Which can be inherently subjective.
For sure. I mean, we've all taken those personality quizzes where we're like, am I feeling more free spirit today or grounded realist? You know,
exactly.
It really depends.
Exactly.
It changes day to day.
Exactly. Human personality is so complex and it's dynamic. So some folks argue that, trying to condense this really intricate tapestry into just 16 distinct categories might be a little bit of an oversimplification.
Right, like trying to categorize all the colors of a sunset.
Yes.
There are endless subtle variations.
Exactly. And they might suggest that personality traits likely exist on more of a spectrum rather than in these absolute clear-cut terms.
I can see that.
Yeah.
So we should approach the MBTI as a framework for understanding, not necessarily this definitive measure of the human psyche.
Exactly.
It's a starting point.
Yes.
But even with these criticisms in mind, the MBTI can still offer some really valuable insights, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I like to think of it like a map.
Okay.
It's not the territory itself,
right,
but it can be an incredibly useful tool for navigating unfamiliar terrain.
For sure.
And similarly, the MBTI, when approached thoughtfully with an awareness of its limitations, can be a really valuable tool for self-reflection, for promoting understanding of different perspectives, and for enhancing communication.
It's about using the MBTI as a starting point for exploration,
right,
not a final destination, right?
Exactly.
Recognizing that we are always evolving, changing.
Always.
And while those 4 letters provide that kind of basic framework, delving into the cognitive functions adds a level of depth and nuance.
It does.
That can be so illuminating, I think.
Absolutely. It's like upgrading from your basic map to one that gives you all the terrain details.
Yes. And helps you read the landscape a little bit better.
Exactly.
I love that analogy. And it really emphasizes the importance of understanding not only our own strengths, but also the unique strengths that other people bring to the table. So knowing all of this, the framework of the 4 dimensions,
right,
this deeper layer of cognitive functions, and the importance of approaching it all with a balanced perspective.
Yeah.
How can we actually apply these insights from the MBTI to our own lives?
That's where the real magic happens.
Okay, I'm ready to unlock this MBTI magic. We've explored the framework.
Yeah.
We've delved into those cognitive functions.
Right.
We've acknowledged, it's not about putting people in boxes.
And it's about embracing those differences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Appreciating the diverse ways that we experience the world. Yeah. So let's talk practical application. Let's say I've taken the MBTI, I've discovered my type.
Okay.
What then? How can I use this knowledge in my everyday life?
I think it all starts with self-awareness.
Right.
So understanding your MBTI type, it can illuminate those natural strengths, those inherent talents that you might not even realize you possess.
Oh, interesting.
But it also reveals potential blind spots, those areas where you might need to develop some strategies or seek support.
So like if I discover I'm an introvert, I shouldn't try to force myself to become the life of the party.
No, not at all. It's about honoring those natural tendencies, working with them, not against them. So for an introvert, that might involve consciously scheduling solo time to recharge.
Okay.
Even if you're also pushing yourself to attend social gatherings.
Right, finding that balance.
Exactly. It's about understanding what you need and creating an environment where you can truly thrive.
Creating that space for yourself to be your most authentic self. I love it. Okay, so we've talked about understanding our own type.
Right.
But how does understanding other people's types come into play? Because I imagine this is where things get really interesting.
Absolutely. This is where empathy becomes such an invaluable tool.
Okay.
When we recognize that others might process information differently than we do or make decisions differently, it really opens the door to more compassionate, understanding, and effective communication.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Can you give me a concrete example of how this plays out, maybe in a real world scenario?
Sure.
Like, what about in the workplace? I feel like this could be so valuable professionally.
Absolutely. So let's imagine you're collaborating on a project with a colleague. This colleague is exceptionally detail-oriented, very structured.
Okay.
Perhaps they're an ISTJ. You, on the other hand, you thrive on big-picture thinking. You embrace flexibility.
Okay, so a little bit of a different approach.
A little bit different. You might lean more towards being an ENFP.
Oh, I can already see the potential for, clashing styles there. The ISTJ might be a little frustrated with, what they perceive as my lack of organization.
Right.
And I might find their, need for meticulous details a little overwhelming.
Exactly. But here's the key. Armed with an understanding of these differences, and not just recognizing them, but understanding the why behind them, you can proactively adjust your communication styles.
To navigate those potential friction points.
Exactly.
So instead of those differences becoming points of contention,
Yeah.
they can actually become strengths.
Yeah.
How would that look in our workplace scenario?
So let's say you, the ENFP, you make a point of providing the ISTJ with regular detailed updates, even if you don't personally need that level of granularity.
Right.
This shows respect for their need for structure. It keeps them in the loop. And then the ISTJ, recognizing your strength and seeing the bigger picture, can practice trusting you to, manage that overall direction of the project.
It's about meeting each other halfway, finding that sweet spot where everyone feels, heard, respected, valued for their unique contributions.
Absolutely. It's recognizing that those diverse approaches working in synergy often lead to the most innovative and successful outcomes.
It's not about trying to fit everyone into the same mold. It's about celebrating what makes each person unique.
Exactly.
I love that. This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I have a whole new perspective, not just on personality, but on the power of understanding,
right.
Appreciating differences, in myself and the people I interact with every day.
It's a journey, this exploration of ourselves and others, it's ongoing. And the MBTI, with its framework of types and functions, it offers a really valuable roadmap, not a definitive guide,
right.
but a tool for navigating those fascinating complexities of human interaction.
A roadmap to more compassionate, more fulfilling, more productive relationships.
I love that.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the MBTI. We hope you found it as enlightening as we did. Until next time, happy exploring.